This is Changing Channels with Larry Walsh, the Channelnomics podcast that connects you with channel chiefs, thought leaders, and executives about what it takes to get the next generation of tech to market. Here's your host, Larry Walsh, the CEO and Chief Analyst of Channelnomics.
Hey everyone, as Lady said, I'm Larry Walsh. Welcome to my fake cloud. And this should be the cue to what we're here to talk about today. Is we're talking about cloud computing and specifically cloud computing in the channel. I will say that there's probably been no other transformative force has come through the channel, at least in the time that I've been in it, perhaps in the history of the channel, that has been as disruptive, as transformational, as evolutionary as cloud computing. So it's hard to have a conversation now anymore without having cloud attached to it. The vendors are moving more of their products, hardware and software, into the cloud. Either the hardware is being replaced by cloud alternatives, the hardware is being attached to cloud somehow, or software is moving into cloud and into the cloud as a service and delivered under subscription. Even though a lot of these services are moving into cloud and a lot of these products are moving to the cloud, it hasn't disintermediated the channel. Vendors are still very much dependent upon partners to bring their services to market. And that's one of the things that we do at Channelnomics is we do a lot of research around what are the trends in terms of partners' adoption of cloud services, how are they developing their practices, and where are they seeing their challenges. And so we have just released the latest iteration of our US State of the Channel Cloud research. And joining me today to start off this conversation is truly one of the people who I rely on the most to tell me what the numbers are and where they come from. He's been my partner in crime for the better part of the last 2 decades. He is Chris Gonsalves, the Senior Vice President of Research here at Channelnomics. Chris, welcome to Changing Channels, your debut on Changing Channels, I might add.
Yeah, it's awesome to be here, Larry. Thanks for having me, man.
You know, it's good. I'm glad to see. I mean, this is a great shot of you in the bunker. I mean, this is a...
I haven't left this room in 18 months.
Start talking. Yeah, hermetically sealed. So as I was saying, Chris, we've been doing this research, and I want to say it's not just Channelnomics. We have been doing this research within a partnership with Ingram Micro Cloud for the last 5 years. We've released 4 different reports on the state of the U.S. cloud channel. Why don't you tell us a little bit about what we're seeing?
Yeah, this is one of the longest longitudinal programs that we run. And it's interesting, you were talking about what the state of the cloud is now and how important it is to the channel and the vendors. It's really interesting to think that when we started this, man, it could have gone either way, right? Like when we started looking at this, cloud was nascent. It was a small part of most practices. And our bet was that it would be the next big thing. It's not the next big thing anymore. It's just the big thing. It's here. And that's the really exciting part about this program. We have talked to over 1,000 partners over the course of the 6 years that we've been running it. So it's rich data. We feel very good and we feel very strongly about the conclusions that we reach here because we've talked to so many partners. But it's really more than the performance. There's a lot of research out there about the performance of these partners and the performance of the kinds of solutions that they're selling. We look at the why in addition to the how. So our research in conjunction with Ingram Micro tells us not only how the partners are doing, what the sales levels are, how important this is to their practices, but what they're doing to make it better, what their practices are. So it's performances and practices. And why is that important? It's because after 6 years, we have really great actionable data about the kinds of things that make for successful cloud programs. We can talk about business acumen and how that impacts both total sales and profitability on cloud. We can look at how much they're reinvesting in their cloud practices and where they're reinvesting that money and how that reinvestment is impacting their performance. So that's the really exciting thing about it to me. We're looking at the trajectory of a really awesome technology, but we're also looking at the human element of it, what folks are doing to maximize their performance, so that we end up with a report that gives you a playbook on how to build a successful cloud practice.
And Chris, one thing I do want to point out before we get too far down the road on this is that you mentioned about the number of partners that we have surveyed over the years. We've added another couple of hundred partners to our sample, enriching the data. And I really do. I think you're actually in a better position to tell us how relevant this data is in terms of its accuracy and reflecting the state of what's happening in the channel relative to cloud. Yeah,
I don't think there's any research in our industry that goes as deep or as wide into these topics as we have. So, our accuracy, our data integrity here is top notch. We're coming at this and being able to fine grain our analysis of it down to the level of, not to get too research nerdy about it, but with a margin of error of plus or minus 5% on a program like this, you can feel really good when we tell you, look, for example, a partner that we think has high business acumen, which we define as someone who has a combination of business planning and specific cloud sales goals or specific cloud marketing plans. They tend to do 15 points more in terms of profitability on a cloud sale than a low acumen partner. I feel really good about that data. We know that it's defensible, and we know that it's accurate.
Yeah. What's really amazing that comes out in this year's report is how important cloud computing is to the partner's business. And if you look back just 5, 6 years ago, even though that we were very deep into the cloud era at that point, 2015, 2016, cloud represented just a small fraction of the partner's gross revenue. And that's no longer the case now, is it, Chris?
I love data. So I think this is a really sexy picture. I don't know what other people see when they look at this slide, but this really speaks to me. And there's, all the work that goes on in this research program behind the scenes is encapsulated in this one picture. There's a lot of stories you could tell from this data, but I'll tell you my favorite one. It begins where you just let us off, which is, 7 out of every $100 that a partner was realizing was coming from the cloud in 2015. We've watched that grow and grow and grow to where it's now, 1 out of every $5 that a partner realizes is coming from the cloud. Now, here's where the story gets interesting. We did notice a blip, right? There's a downturn of 1% in terms of share of gross revenue last year. Well, what else happened in 2020, right?
Well, wait, let's pause on that because I don't know what happened in 2020.
Well, let's just say that things changed, right? We were
something happened.
Mistakes were made, things happened. But it's important to realize that those figures are a share of the total gross. It's a zero-sum game, and each one of those buckets adds to 100. It's a pie that adds to 100%, right? So when we say 17% came from cloud in 2020, well, something else grew. And what else grew? The hardware side. There was a radical call for new hardware and software sales in response to what was going on in 2020, which we'll talk more about here in a minute. But the recovery piece there to 21% for the coming year says something about the resilience of this audience. Now, where do we go from here? If we're looking at a 20% increase year to year, give or take, yeah, we can expect that next year cloud will be 25, 26% of, the total gross revenue of a partner. But that doesn't go up forever. So where does it go? And I'll tell you where I think it goes. I think it levels off soon and maybe shrinks a bit as the pie gets bigger. But the piece that we're already starting to see grow is this emerging technology area. What we consider to be emerging technologies, and I'm talking about IoT and advanced analytics and blockchain and AI and machine learning, AR, VR, wearables, all that stuff, which is still sort of nascent, those things are coming on. And as that grows to become closer to a 1/5 share of partner revenue, we need to remember that all of those emerging technologies have a huge cloud component. So the lines are blurring, is what I'm saying. A lot of this stuff is going to look and perhaps be named differently, but cloud has never been more important because it's going to be the driver for just about everything going forward, which is why I say things like acumen, things like reinvestment in the practice, things like having specific cloud sales and marketing people are going to be vital for the success of the partners going forward, because we're just going to see cloud everywhere in that. And so that graphic will change in coming years, but the importance of cloud is, on a rocket ride.
Yeah, I do want to mention though that a large part of the credit for that growth in terms of being able to supply the technology and the services comes from the other two companies that are helping with this research, and that is Microsoft and Google Workspace, which are also underwriters of the research. So we, thanks to them for supporting this research, but also providing the opportunity to the channel. But you're right, Chris, there's a lot more behind this data, and we're going to get into this with our next guest in a moment. But before we do that, I want to thank you for coming on. And folks, be sure to tune into Changing Channels in the future. Chris will be back. Chris Gonsalves, the SVP of Research here at Channelnomics. He is the man behind the curtain who gives all the great numbers that comes out of our organization. So Chris, thanks again.
No, thanks for having me, man. It's great to be here.
So as Chris and I were just talking about, this is really rich research, and it wouldn't be possible if it wasn't for our friends and partners at Ingram Micro Cloud, and of course, their vendors, Microsoft and Google Workspaces. But joining me now from Ingram Micro Cloud is John Dusett, the Executive Director of Cloud Services for the US. And John, you and I have been collaborating on this work over the past several months. It's really exciting to see it come out finally, right?
Yeah, it really is. I'm excited to see the work come out. And as you said, it's actually work that we've been working on together for years. This is the fourth publication of it. So excited about that.
Yeah. Partners are indicating that they want, to grow their cloud business. In fact, 80% of the partners are telling us that they want to expand their cloud services. And there's really just a fraction of them, like 9%, that say they're not doing anything. They're pretty set on what they're doing. But I mean, 80% is overwhelming to see that level of interest to continue to expand into cloud and into different aspects of the services. What are you seeing in terms of partners asking for in terms of where they want to take their cloud services to Ingram and your vendors? Where's the demand coming from within the channel?
Sure. Yeah. Well, I think I'll pick up on one of the themes that Chris had as well, right? Which is that what we're all saying is that we're kind of out of the first innings, right? Or the first quarter, pick your sport. We're out of the beginning of this, that's for sure. The way I would describe where we are now are people that are moving on to the next kind of generation, the next wave of opportunity that comes around that. And so think cybersecurity, think business applications, think infrastructure now to support data and more advanced workloads in the cloud. So what's interesting about being where we are, though, is that the channel is still a pretty dynamic and vibrant channel. So you've got some that are still in those early stages of their particular business, and we've got some real advanced partners in the market as well today.
Yeah. What do you see as the allure of first that service-based revenue? What is it? Why do the partners see that as a motivator for getting into the cloud?
Yeah, well, it's interesting. I think there's two answers to that question, and maybe there's a story or two that we'll get into as well that kind of make that point. And I think that partners are no exception to that. And those partners that had a well-built services, recurring revenue services base inside their business had more resiliency to manage through the ups and downs of the last 18 months. And I think that that's another one of the allures of getting into the cloud services business, is actually the ability to be more resilient because of the way that you operate with your customers. You extend that out to your customers, right? That's why I think this is a natural extension of what's happening at the end customer level, because partners that can offer up that agility and resiliency down to their customers, scaling up and down as opposed to losing those customers to a competitor, becomes an advantage to them. And then that resiliency also allows them to pivot more quickly. So the story I think about when I think about this is, I recently was speaking to a partner who's pretty sizable. Their cloud services business was already doing well 2 years ago, focused on collaboration and communications. Along comes 2020, right? And they really lean into helping their customers adopt hybrid work, moving workloads to the cloud, all the things you'd expect them to do, right? And they grew at the kind of rates that you'd expect startups to grow at, right? Triple digit growth rates, despite the fact they were already a mature business. So now along comes where we are today, you're right, some changes to the market. What's interesting is, as I was talking to them, they said they made another pivot. The pivot now is to understanding what's happening with employee shift, right? With what's happening in the labor market, at least in the US market, with all the employee shift that's happening, they've taken their business now into offering their customers more kind of talent and HR resiliency types of programs to protect data from not walking out the door when they have turnover, and standing up new hires faster. So it was fascinating to me talking to this partner and thinking about the pivots that they made over the last couple of years. And I think that's the allure. The allure is the growth, but then their ability to make pivots to the customer demands.
We talk about cloud growth, cloud adoption. Chris touched on this, is that there's a lot of saturation that we're seeing in terms of adoption. It's not surprising that productivity software like Microsoft's Office 365 or Google's Workspace it really is at the pinnacle of the types of services that partners are offering. They're also offering a lot of infrastructure services. They're offering some collaboration, but there's a lot of white space out there. When we ask them, though, what is it that they are really looking to do, it really comes down to two factors. What we're seeing is that 76% are telling us that they want to get net new sales. They see this as a pathway for acquiring new customers, new accounts. But then you also have nearly the same numbers of a few percentage points less, as we can see here, that are saying that they want to expand with their existing customers to be able to go and offer them more. So do you see, how do you see this, John, in terms of the goals of the partners, in terms of their cloud strategies of acquisition and retention?
Yeah. Well, first under acquisition, right? I love this set of research here because it points to something that we saw starting maybe a year and a half or 2 years ago, really pre-2020. We started to see a number of partners emerging, realizing that it wasn't going to be enough to go win the market with simple workloads in the cloud, email and collaboration tools. And they began to realize that the problem with that is twofold. Number one is you've got to solve important problems for the end customer to be able to go win in a competitive market. And second, you need good solutions that are sticky and that deliver tremendous value to the end customer so that they want to stay with you. So what they began asking for, and we began helping navigate them to, are what are the more pressing issues that you can go solve for an end customer that is sticky when you win it. But what's really more interesting is it also helps differentiate winning business, period. So we turned things like cybersecurity and employee collaboration into customer acquisition motions. So you're not trying to sell a particular cloud service. You're obviously trying to solve more vexing issues for an end customer, and that becomes the way you acquire customers. So to me, again, the data supports what we've been seeing for partners around customer acquisition is as a motion that people understand well. When done through good solutions, then leads to better retention. I know your research, though, and I'm probably thinking of a question that might already be on your mind. Your research doesn't end there, because it's not enough just to have a good solution to retain a customer, right? Customer experience is now becoming the second arm of this whole cloud services motion in the channel. And I'm thrilled that that's the way things are going, because most partners are now realizing that those two things have to be equally important in their business model. Customer acquisition and customer experience have to actually have equal importance.
Yeah. And you're right. You're reading my mind, and definitely not reading the speaker notes. That's it is a question that's on my mind. It's actually one of the things that's a little disappointing and disturbing to me as I'm going through this research. Uh, in the recurring revenue model, there is two really important factors. Is that you have to continuously acquire new customers, and you also have to retain the ones you have in order to maintain the stability of that recurring revenue. Recurring revenue is only predictable if the customers stay engaged and
Right.
if they continue to pay. And as we can see here, according to our research, the average partner is losing two accounts for every three that they're signing up. And that's a rather remarkable attrition rate. When you
Mhm.
think about that, you said 2 to 3. That's almost like running in place, isn't it, John?
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to be more alarmist, but it's almost a going out of business model. It's
Yeah.
just, there's enough business books to fill a shelf about companies that had that problem, didn't solve it, and they didn't survive. So yeah, it's stunning, but at the same time, it's happening in a growing market. That's why it gets lost a little bit, right? It's a growing market with customer demand that if you serve, you think you're outrunning it. But the best partners are absolutely making customer experience, aka customer retention, an equal priority, and they're changing the game. And
Yeah.
if I may, it's a cliche, it's an old cliche, but it's the classic bucket, right? You want to fill your bucket with water, or customers and business, right? And so you put a hose in it, and you're filling up it. Your sales team is filling the bucket. Lo and behold, you look around the other side, and there's a hole in the bucket, right? And water's coming out just as fast as you've got it going in. The smart partners have figured out how to patch that up. And when they do, what's really great about cloud services is the organic growth that happens within your own customers, because they add a second and third and fourth service. And so you actually grow more rapidly than just the sales funnel you have coming in.
Yeah, and I think that's also an important thing to call out here, is that there is business coming in, that the
Yep.
partners, as we've noted throughout this podcast, as well as in the research itself, is that the partners continue to add more cloud sales. They continue to add more revenue as a percentage of their gross, which means it is becoming an important segment within their revenue stream. But there's still something missing here. There's an element that just isn't clicking, is that the market can only carry you forward, the current, if you will, and not to mix metaphors of currents and channels, can only carry you so far before you get swept out or swept under. All right. And so as you can see here in this graphic, there is a lack of business planning. There is a lack of business acumen. My colleague Chris Gonsalves mentioned this in his segment about being able to measure the efficacy, the quality of the business organization, the back office stuff that really make businesses run. And so, as you can see here, it is truly remarkable that 56% of the partners have no general marketing plan. 59% have no sales goals, general sales goals, meaning they're not setting a number for themselves as a target. 63% have no general business plan, which means they have no guardrails up. 69% have no sales or revenue plan. Just think about that, is that they're not sitting there saying that they have a process for affecting sales. And then 80% have no cloud marketing or sales plan, which means they have no capacity for it. So, John, what do you attribute these numbers? Because it seems almost impossible, to the borderline, absurd, to say that a business in any form doesn't have a sales goal or a sales plan or a business plan. We can forgive the marketing stuff because that truly is, that's hard for everyone. But at least in order to run a business, you have to have revenue. In order to have revenue, you really should have targets. So what is causing these numbers?
Yeah, I'll try my best to attribute it to two things that I think I see, and then I'll point to why I think it's just an important conversation, even if we don't have the exact reasons right. The two things that I see are, first of all, it's happening in a growing market, right? And in fact, it's happening in a fast growing market. And I do believe that there are a lot of owners, partner owners that I talk to, who will describe that they don't have the baseline to fully appreciate the rate of growth that's happening. In a lot of businesses, it's very quarter over quarter or month over month. So I think some of it's just attributed to adjusting to planning and thinking in a very dynamic market. And then the other are, going back to a stat you used earlier, while 80% of channel partners today have cloud in their portfolio, the number of them that actually are cloud heavy or really services led in their business tells us that there's actually still a majority that have a mixed business model. And I think that that might be part of it too, right? Is that in a mixed business model, there's a lot of familiarity with planning your transactional side of the business and a little less familiarity and comfort in how you plan out the services, recurring revenue side of your business. So those are two things I can kind of point to. But the reason why I think the conversation is important, and I think you'll appreciate this, is 2 years ago, I remember you were on stage with us at Cloud Summit, had a great conversation on the same, and the data wasn't all that different. We've improved maybe slightly, but it really says that the work that we're doing, but the work that Channelnomics is doing, right? Congratulations, by the way, second decade of Channelnomics. But the work that you're doing of bringing this information out is really what's important. I know it sounds a little like an evangelist type of a role, but that's the point. Is we've got to help people understand that the most successful partners have business plans.
Yeah. And I want to clarify something, is that thank you. Yes, we have just entered our second decade of,
Yes.
and I still got a little ways to go before we complete our second decade.
In your second decade,
yeah.
I should have said, yes.
Yeah. But you're right, is that, and Chris made note of this, is that, and we see it in the numbers, even though the market is pulling the channel along, I describe this as a lot of partners are coasting into the cloud era. Is that the market, there's enough momentum and enough demand that even if they do the minimum, like we're seeing with some of the business planning, that they're going to have a fair degree of organic success. But that's really not enough. And one of the things that the research does show is that if they have better planning, if they're doing better execution, if they have some focus around where they're placing their investments, they tend to be more profitable. And I think that that's the thing that we really need to highlight here, is that it's not enough to be existing and to collect gross revenue. It's always about how do you translate that into the net result financially for your business, and ultimately in terms of the quality for your customers to keep that recurring revenue coming in.
I happen to believe customer experience is the thing that has the biggest amount of opportunity to shift. There was a piece of research or a data point in some of your research, for example, that when partners were asked what they were doing to help address churn and customer experience, there was a ranking of all of the counteractions that are being taken. It struck me how low today the answer was that they're building out a customer success team. And so it's a little bit of I'll throw a dart on this one. A year from now, that number will be materially higher in your same research, because more partners will realize that if they focus on their customers' success in using cloud services, that changes their whole business. And as more realize it, it will move up in the stack ranks of what's important to them.
I should also mention, though, that this research is the underpinning of an ongoing program that Channelnomics and Ingram Micro Cloud have been running for several years. We have tools, we have information, we have guides. In fact, these tools you see here are the underpinning that allows you to actually interact with the data. The Cloud Altimeter tool allows you to actually see how your business stacks up against others based on the research we've been doing. So you can actually do a self-assessment and see how competitive you are, whether you're ahead or behind, and where you can fill in your gaps. And our Blueprint tool, which is unique, it gives you the ability to go in and do a profile of your own business planning, your business acumen, and get tips based on real world best practices on how to create a better business plan, a better business structure that will result in better outcomes for you. So this is a part of our commitment, with the support of Ingram Micro Cloud, as well as our friends at Microsoft and Google Workspace, to be able to help bring better success, better acumen, better outcomes to partners and vendors that are really still finding their way to success in the cloud. So, I mean, please come check out the resources, come check out the research. We do all this for the betterment of our community, and hopefully to drive the success for everyone. So, John, I really appreciate you joining us. I also appreciate Ingram Micro Cloud for being the great partners that you are in this endeavor with us.
Yeah, Larry, thank you very much. We really appreciate the ongoing commitment to the research, and like I said, the evangelism of helping educate the channel.
So everyone, thanks again. John Dusett, the Executive Director of Cloud Services US at Ingram Micro Cloud. We will definitely have you back again, and we hope to have all of you back again when we do this here on Changing Channels. Until then, we'll see you next time.
Thank you for joining Changing Channels with Larry Walsh, a production of Channelnomics, with the support of our production team at Modern Podcasting. If you've enjoyed today's episode, hit the like button, subscribe wherever you get your podcasts, and share with your friends. For more information about Channelnomics services and insights, follow us on Twitter and YouTube, and check out our website at channelnomics.com. Channelnomics is a registered trademark of, and Changing Channels is copyright by 2112 Enterprises, LLC.